My name is Davis Yates. We had sex 2 days before she cheated on me. I held her, kissed her, looked into her eyes, and 2 days later, she gave herself to someone else. Not just anyone. It was Conrad Ballard, the father of her first child. Someone I already didn't trust. Someone I caught texting her a year ago, asking if she was curious again. She swore it was nothing, but this time, it wasn't nothing. This time, it shattered everything. Before we go any further, let me be clear, this isn't a revenge story. This isn't about shaming, exposing, or humiliating anyone. This is my side of the truth. It's personal. It's emotional. And it's complicated. If you've been through something like this, you know how messy it gets. If you haven't, I hope you never do. I'm not here to say I was perfect, because I wasn't. But I didn't deserve betrayal either. This video talks about infidelity, emotional trauma, and the struggle of rebuilding trust. If that's something you're not ready for, please take care of yourself and come back if or when you're ready. It was 2 days before it happened. 2 days before she cheated, and we'd just been together. We laughed a bit that night. Not much, but enough to feel like maybe, just maybe, we were okay. That's what messes with your head the most. Not the act, not the lying, not even the fact that it happened with Conrad Ballard, of all people, but the fact that I didn't see it coming. At all. We were still married. We had our rough patches. Hell, the last 2 years were just arguments and silence broken up by quick kisses and forced date nights. But I thought we were managing. I thought she just needed space. That's why I never argued and Maya Charles moved to her mom's house. I kept saying, it's temporary. She just needs a breather. Even when I picked up the kids every weekend. Took them off her hands so she could have time to herself. That was me trying. I thought she saw that. I thought she understood love the way I showed it. Turns out, she didn't. She told me I never tried. Wrote it in a damn Reddit post, actually. Said I was cold. Distant. But the truth is, I just showed love differently. I'm not good with affection, and I know that. But I did what I could, taking care of the kids, running errands, trying to keep the peace. I didn't yell. I didn't cheat. I just kept showing up. Doesn't that count for something? Apparently not. I'm not here to bash her. That's not what this is. This is just my story. Our story. Maybe parts of it will sound like yours. Maybe it'll sound like something you've lived through, or something you're scared of happening. I'm not proud of everything I've said or done. I've made snarky comments. I've thrown little jabs in texts. I've shut down emotionally when I should have opened up. But I didn't deserve this. So if you're here for some kind of gotcha moment or revenge fantasy, this ain't that. This is just the truth. Raw. Confusing. Ugly. And maybe a little bit healing too. Looking back, I think the beginning of the end didn't feel like an explosion. It was more like a slow leak. You don't notice the damage at first. But then one day, you realize everything's soaked. We used to fight a lot. Not the screaming, throwing things kind of fighting, just constant friction. Everything became a problem. How I talked, how I didn't talk. How I came home tired. How she felt unheard. How I felt invisible. Little things would snowball into days of silence. I remember one night, Alejandra Henson had cooked dinner. She'd made this baked salmon with some roasted broccoli on the side. The kids were already eating, and I walked in a little late from work. I looked tired. Sat down. And I didn't say anything about the food. Not, thank you. Not, this looks good. Nothing. I didn't mean to be rude. I was just in my head. But I could feel the temperature in the room change instantly. That night, she cried in the bathroom. I could hear her through the door. I stood there, hand on the knob, but I didn't open it. I wish I had. But I didn't know how to. I thought giving her space was the right thing. I thought, she'll be fine by morning. She wasn't. That was the pattern. I'd think I was helping by backing off. She thought I didn't care. We were speaking two different languages, and neither of us bothered to learn the other. Her love language was physical touch, quality time. Mine was acts of service. So when I picked up the kids, let her rest, handled their bedtime routines, I thought I was being a good husband. She saw distance. I saw effort. She saw absence. I saw responsibility. We weren't wrong, either of us. Just disconnected. Eventually, she moved out. Said she needed space. Said staying at her mom's place with the kids during the week would help clear her head. That was 2 years ago. And I let it happen. I didn't fight it. I thought, if that's what she needs to breathe, fine. I'll give it to her. But space has a funny way of turning into separation. And separation turns into silence. And silence becomes resentment. Still, we were technically together. We had our us moments. We saw each other. We'd even sleep together every couple weeks. It wasn't passion, but it was something. It felt like there was still a thread there. Fragile, but unbroken. I remember once, maybe 7 months before it all unraveled, we went to Grant Wu's birthday party. It was one of the few times we showed up as a couple. I remember her smiling, laughing with Simone Cabrera and Briar Hutchinson by the fire pit, holding a cup of wine. I watched her from across the yard and thought, that's the woman I fell for. Then we got in the car, and she was silent. Cold. Said I embarrassed her by talking over her during a joke. I didn't even realize I had. That night ended with her going straight to the guest room. I laid in our bed wondering how two people could be in the same space and feel so far apart. So when people ask me if I saw it coming, the answer is yes and no. I knew things were fragile. I knew we weren't thriving. But cheating? That never crossed my mind. I thought we were still trying, our own broken way, maybe, but still trying. I now realize trying isn't enough when it's two people running in opposite directions. Sometimes I sit and ask myself that question over and over. Was it really that bad? Like, yeah, things weren't perfect. Far from it. But bad enough to lead to this? To betrayal? The thing is, you don't realize how much you're rationalizing pain until it breaks you. I used to tell myself every couple goes through stuff. That it's normal to have long silences. That it's okay if we didn't talk all day as long as we weren't yelling. That sex once every week or two meant we were still connected. But deep down, I knew we weren't happy. We weren't building anything. We were maintaining, barely. And the truth is, I thought it was enough because I was surviving in it. She was drowning. And I didn't notice. But here's the twist that still messes with my head: we weren't in a dead bedroom. I've read stories online, couples who hadn't touched each other in months, even years. That wasn't us. We were still physical. Still intimate. In fact, we had sex 2 days before she cheated. 2 days. That's what made it so disorienting. If we were that disconnected, why were we still close physically? And if we were close physically, how could she go do that with someone else so soon after? She said it didn't mean anything. That it wasn't about sex. That it was emotional. But if that was true, why Conrad Ballard? Why someone who already crossed the line with her before? Someone who texted her months ago with that "you still curious" energy. Someone who made me uncomfortable and who she swore she'd cut off. Why him? She told me, I felt alone. Then she said, I had support, but it wasn't the right kind. At first, I believed her. I thought, maybe I really wasn't enough. But then I remembered, she wasn't alone. Her mom was around. Her sister, Rosie Ferguson, was always helping with the kids. Her church friends like Amanda Armstrong and Joanna DeLeon checked on her constantly. She taught Bible classes for young girls, for God's sake. She had community, people, structure. So I started to wonder if it was really loneliness, or something else. Something she won't admit. Something I can't ask without making everything worse. She told me it happened once. That they built a connection over a week, and then slept together on December 29th. But I saw the phone records. They started texting December 20th. That's 9 days. Not exactly the deepest foundation for an emotional affair. To me, it didn't feel like an emotional bond. It felt like a setup. A slow drift toward a choice she didn't want to own yet. And what broke me the most? Christmas. I bought her gifts. Spent hours picking them out. I wrapped them myself. We weren't even living under the same roof, but I wanted her to feel like she still mattered. Like I hadn't given up. I gave her that, and days later, she gave herself to someone else. You want to know how it feels to give someone love while they're giving someone else their body? Like you're the fool in a movie everyone else has already watched. And even after all of that, I tried to stay calm. I tried to process. I listened to her explanations. I read the messages. I asked the questions. And still, part of me kept wondering, maybe I missed something. Maybe I let her drift too far. Maybe I should have opened that bathroom door that night she cried. Maybe I should have said, I love you, more, touched her more, listened harder. Maybe I should have made her feel like I saw her. But then again, maybe she should have fought for me too. Maybe she should have said something before finding comfort in another man's bed. Was it really that bad? Maybe. Maybe not. But it didn't have to end like this. There is a moment when your life splits in two. Before you knew, and after. For me, that moment was the night I saw her phone light up while she was in the shower. I wasn't trying to snoop. I was actually grabbing towels for the kids. But her phone lit up, and Conrad Ballard's name popped up on the screen. That alone felt like a punch to the chest. The message said, "Did you start yet?" I stared at it like it was written in another language. Start what? I thought. But deep down, I knew. The way he worded it, it didn't sound like friends catching up. It sounded like something specific. Something secret. She came out of the shower, and I was sitting on the edge of the bed holding her phone. She froze. Didn't say a word. Just stared at me like a deer in the middle of a freeway. I asked, "What is this?" She didn't answer at first. Just stood there wrapped in her towel like she had forgotten how to speak. When she finally did talk, her voice cracked. She said it was nothing. Just one time. I can't describe what happened in my body at that moment. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was disbelief, rage, nausea, heartbreak again. It all hit at once. I wanted to throw the phone. Scream. Cry. But all I did was sit there in silence. My ears were ringing. My heart felt like it was skipping every other beat. Then the story started shifting. First, she said she did it because she was mad at me that day. Then later, she said it wasn't just that day, it was everything that had built up. That he had been a shoulder to cry on. That she had no one else. But that wasn't true. She had people. Her mom. Her sister. Her friends from church. She even had Gianna Berger, a friend she would FaceTime during late-night cooking sessions. So why him? Why the man who had already crossed a boundary once before? Why someone she swore she'd cut off? That's when I stopped asking questions. Not because I had closure, but because I knew I'd never get a real answer. We got the phone records. They started texting on December 20th. The messages were constant, back and forth, every day, every night. Then, on December 29th, she crossed that line. 1 week. That's all it took to go from texting to sleeping with him. She still claims it was emotional. That she needed comfort. But I've read those messages. There was nothing deep in there. It was flirting. Curiosity. Lust. I think that's the part that hurt the most. It wasn't even meaningful. It wasn't some grand connection. It was just casual. And reckless. I had to ask her if they used protection. She said yes. Then I found out he was asking about her period. Why would he need to ask that if it was protected? I didn't believe her after that. I still don't. I remember walking outside after she admitted it. It was cold. Midwinter. The sky was clear and empty, and I felt like the only person on Earth. I called Charlie Fitzpatrick, a friend I hadn't talked to in months. I didn't even say hello when he answered. Just said. She cheated, man. He didn't say anything for a while. Just breathed into the phone. Then he said, "Come over." I didn't go. I just sat there on the porch until my hands went numb. And even then, I didn't feel anything. Not the cold. Not the pain. Just, nothing. That night was the longest of my life. I laid in bed thinking about all the little moments we'd shared that now felt fake. All the things I'd done for her. The trust I'd given. The life we'd built. It only took one night to undo it all. Of all the people in the world, it had to be him. That's what kept looping in my head the days after she told me. Not just that she cheated. But who she cheated with. Conrad Ballard. The father of her first son. My stepson's biological dad. The man I had to tolerate, not because I wanted to, but because I had to be mature, for the sake of the kid. We were never close. Never even cool, really. Just civil. Barely. He was the type who'd show up late for pickups and act like he was doing everyone a favor. The type who never paid support on time but still wanted a say in everything. But the truth is, I always had a feeling about him. I'd catch him looking at Maya Charles a little too long when he came by. I caught texts before, flirty ones. One in particular, about a year ago, still makes my stomach twist. "You ever think about us again?" She told me she shut it down. That she blocked him. That it was nothing. I believed her. Now I see it for what it was, foreshadowing. A warning I ignored. The betrayal wasn't just about the act. It was about the layers. The history. The fact that it wasn't just some random stranger she met online or a coworker she confided in. No. It was someone with a personal connection to our family. Someone I had to shake hands with. Someone who shared blood with a child I was helping raise. You know how twisted it feels to look at your stepson and know his biological dad slept with your wife? That there's no way to ever unhear that? Unknow it? It felt like a violation on every level, not just marital, but emotional, parental, psychological. I'd helped raise Byron Ayres since he was 4. And now, the man who bailed on him more times than I could count was the same man she ran to when things got hard between us. I don't even know if I was more angry at Conrad, or at her. He was a known quantity. A manipulator. Selfish. Charming in the way toxic people often are. But her? She was supposed to be different. She was supposed to be safe. I remember confronting her about that. Sitting across from her at the kitchen table, both of us exhausted, broken, holding cups of coffee we weren't drinking. "You knew how I felt about him," I said. "You knew." She nodded. Didn't try to deny it. "I know," she whispered. "I don't even know why I let it happen." That sentence haunts me. Because if you don't know why you hurt someone, how do I trust you not to do it again? And yet, somewhere deep in my gut, I believe her. Not because I'm naive, but because I've lived with her long enough to know when she's lying. And when she's lost. She said she didn't do it to hurt me. That it was a moment. That it was confusing. That she was in a dark place. But even now, months later, when I hear the name Conrad, my whole body tenses. I don't have to see him again, he's mostly out of the picture, still the same flaky guy he's always been. But the damage is done. His name is etched into our story like a scratch on glass. You can clean around it, polish over it, even ignore it sometimes, but it never fully disappears. There's something especially cruel about being betrayed by someone close to your home. It's not like being cheated on by a stranger. It's being betrayed in a place that should have been sacred. It's the enemy already inside the walls. And the worst part? He'll get to walk away from this untouched. No consequences. No wreckage. Just another story he'll probably laugh about one day over drinks. But me? I'm left here picking up the pieces of my marriage. My identity. My trust in people. My sanity. You'd think the cheating would be the worst part. But it's not. What really sticks with you are the little things after. The quiet betrayals. The memories that rot. The moments that used to mean something and now feel like lies. You know what hurt the most for me? Christmas. I put thought into everything I got her. Each gift was intentional. Personal. I wrapped them myself. Wrote a card. I didn't just grab stuff from a store, I wanted her to feel remembered. Seen. Loved. That was December 25th. On December 29th, she gave herself to Conrad Ballard. 4 days. 4 days between me giving her a box of gifts and her giving him her body. I don't even care if it was emotional or physical anymore. That kind of timing isn't an accident. It's a choice. It's a conscious, heartbreaking decision that tells me where I stood in her life at that moment: nowhere. I keep thinking about the look on her face when she opened those presents. She smiled. She said thank you. She hugged me. We sat on the couch after and watched a movie with the kids. And 4 days later, she was in bed with someone else. How do you live with that? I've read stories where people say the moment they found out about the affair was the worst day of their lives. For me, it wasn't that day. It was every day after. When I kept seeing the story in everything around me. The bathroom where we used to talk about the future. The passenger seat where she held my hand on road trips. The couch where we sat in silence, pretending things were fine. I even remember this one little moment, probably meaningless to her, but it stuck with me. We were out getting groceries. Just a normal day. And in the checkout line, she randomly reached for my hand and squeezed it. She didn't say anything. Just held it for a second. That was December 23rd. 6 days before. Every time I replay these moments, I start to feel like I'm going crazy. Because if she could still laugh, still hug me, still be intimate, how much of it was real? Was it real for her too? Or was it all a mask until she could leave me for good? She told me she never stopped loving me. She cried. A lot. Said she made a mistake. Said she hated herself for it. She owned it. Eventually. Took full responsibility. But when someone shatters you and then apologizes for stepping on the glass, it doesn't make the bleeding stop. And the worst part? I let her come back. Not officially. But there were nights she stayed over. Times we slept together again. Each time felt like I was testing myself. Not on her face. Not in the room. Just this loop of her and him, together. I'm honestly surprised I didn't go soft. Mentally, it was torture. Physically, it felt good. I'm not gonna lie. But after? The shame hit hard. Like I betrayed myself for letting her touch me again. I don't know why I let it happen. Maybe I needed the closeness. Maybe I wanted to feel wanted. Or maybe I thought, deep down, that if I could sleep with her again, maybe I could start to heal. I was wrong. It didn't heal anything. It just opened the wound wider. I started to hate how easily I folded. I made jabs in texts. Snarky comments when we spoke. I would say things I didn't mean just to hurt her back. Things like, did he do it better? Or, bet you didn't make him wait every 2 weeks. She never yelled back. Just sat there, took it. Or cried. And I'd feel like garbage afterward. But when you're hurting, you don't want to heal, you want someone else to feel the burn too. The irony is, she started trying. Really trying. She brought me food when I was sick. She stayed over a couple nights. Said the space between us wasn't working. That she wanted to move back in. But all I kept thinking was, is this because you want me, or because he's done with you? I haven't said that out loud. But it's the question that keeps me up some nights. And maybe what hurts more than the cheating itself is that I don't know if I'll ever stop asking that question. People think the moment you find out is the worst part. But that moment, that initial shock, it's quick, loud, sharp. The real pain is what happens after. The silence. The overthinking. The way your brain starts replaying everything, even stuff that has nothing to do with it. You start questioning the whole relationship. Not just the cheating. Did she ever really love me? Did she ever respect me? Was I just convenient? The days after I found out felt like a dream I couldn't wake up from. I'd go through the motions, work, shower, take care of the kids, but none of it felt real. I couldn't focus. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat right. I remember sitting in my car outside a gas station, engine running, and just staring at the wheel for almost an hour. Didn't even realize time passed. I wasn't thinking about anything specific. Just numb. Meanwhile, she kept texting. Telling me she was sorry. Telling me she was scared she lost me for good. Asking what she could do. I didn't know what to say back. I wanted to scream. I wanted her to feel what I was feeling. But I also wanted her to fix it. I wanted her to somehow make it all disappear, even though I knew she couldn't. One night, about a week after it happened, she came over. I didn't tell her to. She just showed up. Brought soup because I was sick. I hadn't eaten all day. She didn't try to talk. She just set the food down, checked my temperature, and sat with me while I watched some show I wasn't really watching. And for a few minutes, it felt normal again. But even that moment hurt. Because as soon as she left, I realized that everything I just felt was built on a lie. Even the comfort felt fake. Like my brain was trying to stitch the old world back together using broken pieces. I started noticing how I was changing. I was bitter. Cold. Paranoid. I'd read her texts and second-guess every word. I'd see photos of us smiling and want to throw my phone across the room. I wasn't healing. I was unraveling. I didn't tell anyone at first, not my parents, not even close friends. I didn't want to hear what they'd say. I didn't want them to hate her because I wasn't even sure if I hated her. Eventually, I opened up to Miguel Taylor, an old friend I hadn't seen in a while. He came by one evening just to catch up. I ended up breaking down mid-conversation. Told him everything. He didn't say much. Just sat with me. Told me he was there. That was the first time I cried in front of another man. And I didn't feel ashamed. I just felt tired. The emotional weight doesn't just sit on your chest, it follows you everywhere. You start reacting differently to everything. Songs hit harder. Silence feels louder. Even the way your kid says daddy feels like it's pulling your heart in two directions. Because I wasn't just grieving what she did. I was grieving what we had. What we built. What we were supposed to become. I wasn't sure if I wanted to forgive her. But I knew I couldn't forget. And I didn't know how to live in that space between. Some nights I'd stare at the ceiling and imagine alternate timelines. In one, she never left her mom's house. In another, she never replied to Conrad. In another, I opened that bathroom door years ago when I heard her crying. It's funny how your brain tries to rewrite reality just to give you peace. But this was my reality now. My marriage was in pieces. And no matter how many good things she tried to do after the bomb went off, the mess was still there. Trying to move forward felt like trying to walk across broken glass barefoot. Every step left a new cut. And I was bleeding all over the future. This is the part they don't talk about. What happens after the apology? After the crying? After the confessions and the breakdowns? They don't talk about what happens when the person who broke your heart suddenly wants to fix it. Because the truth is, that's its own kind of pain. Maya started trying. She brought me food when I was sick. She stayed over on nights when I didn't ask. She cleaned the kitchen. Did the laundry. Sat with me while I watched TV I wasn't even into. She started using words like, "I miss us. I want to come home. I know I messed up but I'm not giving up on you." And the thing is, part of me wanted to believe her. Because I still loved her. I still do. But every time she hugged me, I'd freeze. Every time she touched my face, I'd flinch, not visibly, but inside. Because my body remembered what my heart was trying to forget. I wanted to forgive her. God knows I wanted to let it go. But it wasn't just about cheating. It was the trust. The way the ground underneath me had shifted. The way every memory now came with an asterisk. We'd be laughing about a story from last year and suddenly I'd think. Was that before or after she started texting him? She said she felt the space between us had made things worse. That living apart created a wedge we didn't know how to close. That we both gave up in different ways. She's probably right. I gave up too. I shut down. Made smart remarks. Didn't fight for her the way I should have. I wasn't the best husband. But I was still her husband. And I never crossed that line. So now she wants to move back in. She says space isn't helping. That the only way we can rebuild is if we're together, day to day. But I can't lie, I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know how to share a bed with someone and not wonder if her mind is somewhere else. I don't know how to let her hold my kids without picturing what she did behind my back. I don't know how to trust a hug that feels both familiar and foreign at the same time. It's not just her I'm struggling with. It's me. I don't know who I am in this marriage anymore. Am I the husband who forgives? Or the man who finally walks away after too much damage? I asked myself something the other night that I still haven't answered. If she hadn't cheated, if this had just been more distance, more arguing, would I have stayed? And the truth is, I don't know. Because maybe this just exposed the cracks we had been ignoring for years. And maybe I was too scared to admit that we were already slipping. But now that she's trying, now that she's putting in effort, it almost feels worse. Because the version of her I needed for years, the version who's kind, attentive, gentle, willing, she's showing up now. But she brought him here with her. She didn't come back alone. She came back with a shadow. With a scar. With a past I didn't choose but now have to carry. And I keep asking myself, am I strong enough to carry it? Or is this the part where I finally let it go? If it were just me, I think I would have walked away by now. Honestly. But it's not just me. It's the kids. And that changes everything. People love to say, don't stay for the kids. But the truth is, when you're staring at their faces, watching them ask where mom is or why she's not coming home tonight, that phrase doesn't mean much. They don't care about counseling or healing or emotional boundaries. They just want their family. They want what they had before everything cracked open. Byron Ayres is still young, but he's sharp. He picks up on energy. When Maya and I talk in the kitchen, even if it's calm, he watches us like he's bracing for something. And our daughter, Sophia McCullough, she started drawing pictures of us all together again. All smiling. Same house. Same table. It guts me. Because what do I do with that? How do I tell her that picture may never be real again? How do I sit across from them at dinner, knowing what I know, and not let it bleed into my tone, my mood, the air? Maya said we should keep it together for them. That they need stability. I agree. But what does stability even mean now? Is it pretending everything's okay? Or is it being honest, even if that honesty is messy and painful? Some days I wonder if staying would teach them forgiveness. Other days I worry it would teach them to tolerate betrayal. And then I start wondering what they'll remember. What they'll grow up carrying. Will they remember the fights? The cold dinners? The sadness behind the smiles, or will they remember the good days? The beach trips. The bedtime stories. The nights we watched movies until they fell asleep on the couch. I want to believe we can give them something healthy. But I'm not even sure I know what that looks like anymore. Because here's the truth no one likes to say out loud: love isn't enough. Not when trust is broken. Not when you look at the person next to you and see a different version of them than the one your kids still adore. I see Maya trying. And I see the kids lighting up when she's around. And I feel this weight, this guilt, this pressure to keep the whole thing from falling apart. Because if I leave, am I the one who broke the family? Or am I the one who finally told the truth? Every choice feels like a loss. If I stay, I lose a part of myself. If I leave, they lose the only version of home they've ever known. And somehow, I'm supposed to make peace with either outcome. But I can't. Not yet. Not when I still wake up in the middle of the night wondering what kind of man I need to be, for them, for her, and for me. This part still messes with me. More than I want to admit. Because Maya wasn't just a believer, she was a devout one. Church twice a week. Bible study every Thursday. Leading a girls' youth class on Sundays. Praying before dinner. Reading scripture at night. She didn't just talk about faith. She lived it. Or at least, that's what I thought. That's what makes all of this so confusing. Because when someone you trust, someone you see as spiritually grounded, morally clear, does the one thing you never thought they were capable of, it makes you question everything. Not just about them, but about the faith they claim to follow. About God. About forgiveness. About yourself. I remember one Sunday, just a few weeks before everything came out, I went with her to church. She stood up during worship. Hands lifted. Eyes closed. Tears in her eyes. It looked real. It felt real. And now I don't know what to do with that image. Because how do you reconcile that same woman standing in front of a congregation with the one who betrayed her vows just days later? Was any of it real? Or was it all a mask she wore to feel better about the parts of herself she couldn't face? She says her faith is real. That what she did went against everything she believes. That she hated herself afterward. That she's prayed every night since. Maybe she has. But I haven't. Not in a while. Because I don't know how to pray about something like this. I don't know how to ask God for healing when I'm still angry. Still bitter. Still hollow. And I hate that. Because faith used to be something we shared. Not deeply, not like her, but enough that it was part of our bond. Now it just feels like another space where the divide between us has grown wider. She said once that I should give therapy a try. That maybe it would help more than Reddit threads or late-night pacing around the house. She even said, "It's better to talk to someone than to bottle it all up and bleed on everyone else." I told her, therapy doesn't work for me. That I've been down that road. That it's just strangers saying words and calling it healing. She replied, "So is Reddit." She wasn't wrong. But at least here, I get to speak without being interrupted. Without being told to breathe through the pain and turn the page. I'm not ready to turn the page. I know she's still going to church. Still doing her studies. Still teaching those little girls about forgiveness and faith and God's mercy. And I want to believe she means it. I want to believe she's not a hypocrite. I want to believe that people can do terrible things and still be good somewhere underneath it all. But part of me can't help but feel like she broke something sacred. Not just between us. But in herself. In what we believed. And I don't know how to sit next to her in a pew ever again. Not when every song will remind me of what was broken. Not when every prayer sounds like a lie wrapped in silence. I've lost count of how many people have told me to try therapy. Friends. Even strangers in DMs when I briefly shared my story online. But mostly, Maya. She keeps saying it. You should talk to someone, it'll help. You can't carry all of this on your own. And maybe she's right. But the truth is, I don't trust therapy. I've tried it before. Years ago. Sat across from a guy in a sweater vest who nodded while I told him my life was falling apart. He said things like, "That must be hard. How does that make you feel? Let's unpack that." I didn't feel better. I felt observed. Like I was part of a case study. I left every session feeling more drained than when I walked in. So no, I didn't go back. Maya thinks I just didn't find the right one. She says it's like dating, you have to keep trying until you find someone you connect with. But here's the thing. I don't want to keep trying. I'm tired of talking to people who don't know me, trying to explain the whole story from the beginning. I'm tired of hearing advice from people who've never lived what I'm living. And honestly, I don't want to hear that I need to forgive. I don't want to be told that healing takes time. I know that already. I'm living it. Every single day. And sometimes, the thought of spilling my guts to a stranger just feels like betrayal all over again. Like I'm giving pieces of myself away to someone who won't care once the session ends. It's easier to type to strangers online. At least there's no voice, no pressure, no silence to fill. Just words on a screen and people who reply with their own messes. It feels like a community, even if it's temporary. Even if no one really knows anyone. Maya says Reddit isn't enough. That I need real help. But I don't know if I believe in real help anymore. Because what's a therapist gonna say? That I need to communicate better. That I have unresolved trauma. That I'm projecting my pain through sarcasm and avoidance. No offense, but I already know that. What I don't know, is how to stop. How to turn off the part of me that keeps rewinding time. That keeps reliving the night I found out. That keeps hearing his name every time I touch her. I don't know how to tell a therapist that sometimes I feel like I'm two people. The one who wants to save this marriage. And the one who wants to walk away and never look back. I know I'm not okay. I just don't know if I want to be okay through someone else's process. Because it feels like one more thing I can't control. And lately, control is all I have left. I get why Maya wants me to go. She's trying. She wants to prove she's all in. She wants me to match her effort. But I don't know if we're even on the same playing field anymore. She broke something inside me, and I don't know if I'm ready for anyone to dig around in it, not even a professional. Maybe someday. But not today. Today, I just want quiet. Even if it's heavy. Even if it hurts. I used to think forgiveness was a decision. Like something you just say once and it's done. But now I know, it's not a moment. It's a war. And I lose that war every time I open my mouth. Because even when I try to be civil, even when I think I'm doing okay, the resentment slips out. In small ways. In short, sharp comments that sting harder than I intend. Jabs. That's what Maya calls them. She'll be folding laundry, and I'll say something like, "Bet you didn't do his clothes." Or she'll bring me dinner, and I'll say, "Nice. Hope he got room service too." It's petty. I know. But it's like there's this version of me that doesn't care about growth or healing, it just wants her to hurt. Like I did. The worst part is, I don't feel better after. I just feel empty. Like I broke something fragile I was already struggling to hold. Maya usually doesn't react. She just goes quiet. Sometimes she tears up. Sometimes she just walks away. And I hate that. Because then I become the villain in the room. And suddenly, it's not about what she did. It's about how I can't let it go. She said once, "I know I messed up. But I can't fix it if you keep reopening the wound." I didn't answer her. Because what was I supposed to say? That the wound never closed in the first place. I don't want to be this bitter. I don't want to keep throwing punches no one asked for. But something in me keeps trying to make the pain even. Like if I can level the playing field, I won't feel so powerless. Some days, I'm calm. Some days, we laugh. Some days, we talk like friends, like parents who still care about each other. And then something triggers me. A phrase. A look. A silence that lasts too long. And suddenly I'm right back there, in the room with her phone in my hand, reading messages from Conrad Ballard, and wondering how the hell I got here. It's like emotional whiplash. 1 second I'm hopeful. The next I'm drowning in flashbacks. I know it's not sustainable. I know if this continues, we won't make it. Because you can't rebuild a house and set it on fire at the same time. Maya's still. But this part of the journey, this bitter middle ground, it's breaking me just as much as the affair did. And I'm starting to realize that if something doesn't shift soon, there won't be anything left to save. I wish I had a clear ending. Something neat. Something hopeful. Something that wraps this all up with a bow. But the truth is, I'm still in it. Still figuring it out. Still waking up some mornings feeling okay and other mornings wondering how I'll make it through the day without falling apart. Maya's still here. Not every night. But she comes by. She calls. She checks in. She asks me how I'm feeling, not just physically, but emotionally. And I don't always have an answer. Sometimes I just shrug. Sometimes I say I'm fine when I'm not. Sometimes I give her a piece of truth, enough to show I'm trying, but not enough to let her all the way back in. We've had a few good days lately. Sat down for dinner as a family. Laughed about old stories. Even watched Sophia put on a fake talent show in the living room with a hairbrush mic and glittery sunglasses. And for a second, it felt like us again. Before all of this. Before December. Before the lie. I caught myself smiling. And that scared me. Because it means the part of me that still wants this is still alive. But I also know what we lost. And I don't know if that part can ever come back fully. Forgiveness is a process. So is healing. And right now, I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm learning how to sit in the tension. To hold two truths at once. That I still love her. And that I'm still hurt. That she's showing up now. And that she didn't when it mattered most. That maybe we can rebuild something. And maybe we can't. But I'm no longer rushing the answer. Because whatever happens next, whether we make it or not, I know I'm walking forward with eyes open. I'm not the same man I was. Not before the cheating. Not even after. I've changed. And maybe that's what this whole mess forced me to do, face the parts of myself I kept hidden. The anger. The silence. The fear of being vulnerable. I'm not perfect. But I'm here. And that counts for something. So if you're going through something like this, if your world just cracked in half and you don't know which way is up, you're not alone. It doesn't get better overnight. But you do get stronger. Piece by piece. And one day, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day, you'll look around and realize you survived something that once tried to destroy you. And maybe that's the ending. Not peace. Not closure. But survival. And survival is enough for now. If this story connected with you in any way, leave a comment, share your experience, or just say you're here. And if you want more real, honest stories like this, subscribe. We're all just trying to figure it out, together.